I recently did some masks for Carnival of the Animals by Ogden Nash, set to music, which was presented to very young children to expose them to music. And so in order to expose them to music, they used the dancers to visualize what the children were seeing, and it was very successful. It was for a Kids Arts program. Kids Arts then called me and said they were doing another musical version for children, but it was called the Dinosaur and the Jogger, and they were interested in having a dinosaur that a dancer could get into and move and dance with this little boy who's going to be the jogger. So I was starting to research and see what I could do, what kind of a dinosaur it should be, and one of the stipulations was it couldn't be too scary. It had to be user-friendly for little children. So I got some books with some dinosaurs from the children's section over at Barnes & Noble, and then I found a puzzle in the Yellow Brick Road bookstore for children. And so there's lots of variety. The one thing I was looking for was lots of detail, and actually, like, these dinosaurs don't have a lot of detail in the head. So I sort of liked the Triceratops because it had horns and it had an interesting snout and a little bit more going on. So I sort of was combining all these different things and started to do a sketch of what it might look like. And so this is just a very preliminary look at what it could be. And then I used some color so that I can go looking for fabric. And I decided green would be a good place to start because, first of all, most people I would think would identify with a green. So I'm using 2 shades of green at least, and then a stomach and another color. I hope to use another color for the little steps that go down his back. And one of the interesting things about this particular dinosaur is that the person that's playing it, now the gentleman who's playing it is about 6 foot tall and weighs 180 pounds. He's a choreographer. So I know that he has to move in the costume. So that becomes quite a challenge because you want the proportions that make it look like a dragon, and yet his legs have to fit in here. He has to be able to move his arms, and then his head. Now, in this particular one, because if you put a man's head in here, his head is going to be right here, so he's not going to be able to look out the eyes of the mask. So hopefully he can look through the mouth, and some screen can be put in so he can see it other directions. But in making the concept of this dinosaur work, you have to always be in mind that there's a person inside of it, and how do you make all the head and the hands and the feet fit the size and the shape of the dinosaur that you're working on, and still have a human be inside and be able to move and dance and maybe even talk, which means the mouth could move. So these are all things that have to be considered. Another thing that was part of the research as I was doing the sketch for the dragon was to think about color and fabric and what kind of fabric I'm going to use. And so I just took a walk through one of the fabric stores in town, and I started out looking at fur, seeing what was available in terms of color, or sometimes they have mottled spots, and there's all kinds of fur available. So I was checking out the fur, and then very close to the fur there was a fleecing, like a blanket fleecing, which is really soft and has a nice feel to it, but it's very flat in texture and in what it looks like, but it feels good. And so then I just thought I'd walk around a little bit more, and then I came upon some velvets and velours. Some of them were stretch velvets and stretch velours, and that was very interesting too because of the fact that it stretched, but also because there was more play with the light on the velvet than there would be in the fleecing or the fur. And so that's something that I'm going to be considering. The other thing is the colors. There were more colors available pretty much in the velvets and velours, and even some different textures. And so I wanted to get as many different textures as possible into the outfit, so that the stomach might be one texture and the front of the costume might be slightly different than the other, and if I choose to use velvet or not. Then the nap of the fabric makes a big difference. So some of them, if the nap goes up, it gives a darker look and more light reflection. On the other one, if you use the nap going down, it would have a softer look. So that could all help make it much more interesting than just a flat dinosaur. So hopefully, after I get the sketch a little bit further along, I'll go back to the fabric store, and I think I'll be able to make my final decision. And the fabric itself may influence the color that is chosen, because it could be blue or pink or whatever. But again, we'll see what the fabric availability is and how that might change. Now I'm looking for ideas for putting the body together, and one of the concepts was to use air conditioning ducts that are very lightweight, or dryer hose pieces for the arms and legs, and I'm still considering that. However, I'm also considering using foam, maybe half-inch foam, to form legs so that there's air and it doesn't get too warm for the actor, but also so that it can be sculpted with padding. And originally I thought spraying the foam would be fun, because you can actually spray with spray paint. You can get almost like an airbrush quality and get some great colors. But I've been looking at fabric, and I saw some stretch velvet. There's plush fabric that's very nice, like children's toys, but the stretch velvet has great light and shadow concepts to it. Plus, if you have padding, you can soft sculpt with the stretch fabric much more easily. I also think the fabric might be more friendly to the children, because it would look like a stuffed animal rather than a hard surface, in case they are able to touch it or play with it. So I have to keep thinking about very young children and not scaring them with this semi-large dragon. So the next thing then is, how do you build the face? The head will be separate from the body, so I have to start from the ground up, and I'm starting with which I usually use, is a Chinese Mandarin hat, which usually fits the head quite closely and tightly, and then I build away from that, and usually use a chin strap so that everything is as secure as possible to the head before you start building. If I need height, I could add a hat such as this. Now, usually you could start with paper mache or some lighter substance in order to form this, but when time comes into play, I look for forms that are already shaped, and then I can spend my time on the detailing of the animal, because this has to be done within a week. I just go through stores looking for ideas and things. These are Mickey Mouse hands that are actually larger than the rubber ones. And actually, if I'm soft sculpturing, these hands will work out very well, because I'll sew the fingers together and add little fingernails, and then I can cover them with the fabric, different colors of the velvet. And I just happened to see in a thrift store this dog face pillow, which gives me some idea, even though I may not use this in the actual shaping of the face, it gives me an idea of the size, of how much bigger it should be, and where I can put screens for the eyes so the actor can see as well as possible, and you're not aware that he's looking out of it. So this gives me, it'll probably be a little bit larger than this to fit the rest of the body, but this gives me some idea of starting with proportions and so on. Probably one of the things, a lot of this stuff I just find around my house, and so I try to use what's available. It has to be lightweight. So I may use some styrofoam for little detail pieces, may use some hula hoops that have been cut down to give some sort of shape to the costume, or maybe the air ducting will work in the body area and then the tail area for some of that lightweight shaping. You want the head to be as light as possible also. So I was shaping some costumes for the Lorax, which is another play that I'm working on, and I bought some piñatas for bodies of the birds and so on. And there's a huge, fairly large hard hat piñata that I thought of using for the body. Well, I'm not using it for the body anymore, so I'm turning that into probably the head piece, simply because it's very lightweight, and I can build from it because it's already this big around, so it's almost the proper shape to build off of for the size of the head, and it's very lightweight. So right now my problem is to go and search out some of the air ducting and some foam and any other sort of strange lightweight things that I might find, baskets or whatever, and then come back and experiment with them and try to put them together to start creating the body. Okay, we've just come back from our shopping spree and bought some half-inch foam, which I'm going to start with the half-inch foam on shaping the legs and see if it's rigid enough. And then this is the batting, which will be used to soften the over the top of the foam and soften the joints. And the large 3-inch foam padding probably will be used for the feet of the dragon, which you put a shoe inside and then stick the shoe into the foam and cut the foam the foot shape. And I may use this for some of the trim, the round edge. I bought a cow head to reinforce for the shape of the snout of the dragon, and originally I bought this, but I think actually it's better if I turn it upside down and use this shape because it's more dragon-like to add to the hard hat for the basic shape. The bra cups I think I will be using for the eyes of the dragon, and then cutting out a pupil, possibly out of an iron-on patch. And still experimenting. Also for the hands I have these Wuchi horns, which can be sewn on, and then I can cover the rest of the hand with fabric, and it looks like these are going to work for the foam. And then this is a screening fabric, almost like window screening, but which can be used for the actor to see through. So we cut a swatch in the mask so the actor can see well enough to dance. And then we'll cover or paint it to match the fabric. We have 4 different colors so far of the fabric. The green velvet, a stretch velvet, is going to be used for the back part of the dragon, arms and legs, and the lighter shade is going to be used for the front part of the front or underside. And then we have a yellow. This is actually velvet. This is a velour, which doesn't have as much nap. Then we have a stretch crushed velour, which we will use for the stomach of the dragon, along with a gold, which will be used for the accents to tie it all together. So those are our major colors. And then another accent color would be this right here, this purple and greenish look, which we will do for the horns and the humps on the dragon or the dinosaur's back, and maybe some spots on the dark green. And this will, hopefully this will make it a little bit more like a stuffed animal, which will be friendly, child friendly, I guess we could say. We want to use a zipper in the back, so it'll have a back opening, and then we'll Velcro on top of it the humps, which will cover the zipper and hold the costume together. So it's one way to conceal the zipper and also to have more detail to the costume. So now my job is to start cutting the foam and trying to put it all together. So we'll see how that goes. I also found this tassel, which is kind of nice. It's not too fancy. And instead of horns on this little dinosaur, we might put little ear-like protrusions, which almost suggest hair. And I think it's something that will make it a little bit more comical and more fun. So we'll see if that works out when I get the face put together. Well, this is the first mock-up when I put together a muslin shell with, instead of hula hoops, I'm using this insulated tubing. It's much softer, and I think it's going to work for the smaller body. And then I needed to lay out the feet and the head to see the size relationship of everything. The head came out a little larger than I thought, but then I have very large hands and very large feet, so I think it's going to work out just about right. This is just a mock-up. It won't look quite as big as this. Originally, I had the eyes up here. I'm using this old, I'm using a bra cup for the eyeball, and then I was using iron-on patches for the eyes, like this, but it turns out that the eyes look too big this way. So I took these off, and then I finally dropped down the eye, and actually the actor, now it's actually better because he can actually see right out of the eye where he's supposed to see out of, and I don't have to camouflage it. So I'm going to do a circle up here and make it a little cuter, and then his mouth is going to have to move, so I'm going to put a spring in there that can be activated by pulling down. So in order to get the head shape, I started out with a piñata, a hard hat piñata, which is very lightweight, on top of a Chinese Mandarin hat. And then I'll take this green off, and you can see the rest. You can see why you don't know what it's going to look like until you cover it, because this is simply other mask. There's a frog mask under here, which I've cut up to use for the snout. So here you can see how different the concept is when you look at what I've made up here. This part of this will be cut out, and there will be a spring in the mouth so that the actor actually has to talk, so I figure the mouth better move. and otherwise he does a lot of dancing. So actually, instead of the eyes being up here, they're now down here, which makes much more sense and actually looks better. Then the feet have to be trimmed with a knife, and then in order to smooth them, you can either clip them with scissors or use them on a sander, which makes a nice smooth edge before you cover them. Right now, what I need to have somebody inside it for a fitting, so I can see the underside, pull the underside through, and this is going to come through and go onto the tail. It's going to be this clever trick dog leash, you see. It's going to go right in to the costume, and the bottom of the tail will come up this way and the back will come up this way, very lightweight, and may be wired so that it's wired to the costume. But I have to start fitting that all before I start putting the final fabric on. So this has to now come apart and have a fitting and redo it. Well, so now the dragon has a shape. We have the muslin cover, then the batting was put on top of the muslin, and then I formed a tail out of that dog leash that we had, and I've gotten it ready. It's going to have a fish line wire that will hold it in place. And so the whole, I had to try it on to make sure that you could actually move in this, but here's what the dragon looks like before he gets his skin on. And then these legs are going to come up and make folds, and the arms will come up and make folds as well, but I'm going to do that with the fabric on them. So the first part of the fabric that goes on with another piece of batting is the dragon's stomach or chest. So I'm using this is a velour, velvet. It looks like velvet, but it's a very short nap velour. And the nap on the velour, there's not much nap, but it's going up, which gives you the darkest shade of the velour. If you turn it the other way, you get a lighter color. When the nap goes up, it's darker, and when the nap goes down, where it feels good, the fabric is actually lighter. So I've chosen in most cases the darker. This is a crushed velvet, and the nap, it feels very good like this, but the nap going down gives it a darker and more lush color. This is the same way. This is an actual velour, and it does have a little bit of a nap, and it's going this way, which makes it appear darker, but it gives much more light reflection than if it were going the other way, the nap were going down. So once the front is finished, I will make a back section, and then the arms. The back is going to be the darker green velvet, or a velour, I guess it is, a stretch velvet, and it's going to be a dark green, and so it's going to connect here so that the back will be darker, the front is lighter, than the stomach is even lighter still. And then the stomach will continue all the way around the tail, and up here will be that yellow, very much like the stomach. And then the back will have the horns on it. This is very long for a sleeve, but when I get the fabric on it, I'm actually going to make folds in it so that it looks sort of like a stuffed animal that's been tucked. And actually the stretch velvet, it's okay to wrinkle because it gives some nice light and shadows. So the next time you see this, hopefully all the skin will be on the dragon. Well, we're a little further along now. We've sewn everything together, including putting the sleeves in and getting the tail set up for the back. The next step is to put zippers in, and on the sleeves I'm going to take out, there's a little too much foam, especially on the lower arm, and I'm going to do a roll at the shoulder seam, and then we'll bunch this so it gives him a little bit more interest in his arm, and it'll just be done with heavy button or carpet thread. And then the hands will be next. The last thing right now is to do the legs and set them in to the leg holes. Then the whole body will be one piece and all together. So then we work on the feet and the hands and the head. You cut it out on the bandsaw, and then I will hollow out a place for the foot and make a slit and hollow out a place for a shoe. So we actually put the person's shoe in it, and you can get right into your shoe. It doesn't need to be laced or anything. Then we'll round the edges of the feet and cover it with fabric. I put this piece in so he can rest it on his chest and keep his head up. And he can control it better. The head is progressing. Underneath all of this is a piñata, the shape of a hard hat, and then there's a frog mask which is utilized, and a welder's shield headgear, which is actually what everything is resting on, and so there's quite a bit of space around it. So now I've used, you can see the dark green fabric is being used for the top of the head. I'm using the lighter green to shape the eyebrows, and I put some little teeth in just to give it a cuter look, and then he's going to have nostrils right here, so I'll have to, a lot of this right now will be sort of soft sculptured once I get the fabric in place. I've padded the fabric. I'll do a little bit of tucking and soft sculpturing by hand with a needle and thread to give it its shape. And then I haven't decided yet if I want these horns on top of the head. It's just to give him a little bit more character. I may do these horns, and I haven't quite decided yet. I'll have to see what he looks like when I get it together. But this actually matches his stomach, so it would be kind of fun as a color thing. So this is the beginning of the end, and then eventually I think I'm going to have those little tricorn spines that'll go down his back and on his tail, sort of in graduated sizes. So that's, and I think that's all there is until you see the finished product.
Well, pick it up right at scene one. Yeah, scene one. So here we are, scene one. Sorry.
Quiet now, please. I won't be long. My story begins with an evening song. Twilight dims.
Let's jump to our 28. This is, I'm giving you 2 hours before our starting night. Okay.
A starry night and nobody about. I started out on my exercise route. Jogging right along past the dinosaur museum. It was strange as it may seem, had a hole in the wall of the exhibition hall.
Yeah, I'm just thinking what I have to do afterwards. I can stay. Well, of course, but I have to go home anyway. It's fine. Ever ride now?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Scary.
One more fill here. I think that's better. It's just because you're so big, if you walk like this. Yeah. Right. Excellent. You're the fiddler then. And the higher you put it, the fiddler on the scale. Right. Okay. All right. You can put your hand here. Anything you do. You can. Yeah, I can't see what it looks like.
You were scared. I'm from the museum. I came out from my stall. There was a hole in the wall. It's so hot back in there. I need some cool, fresh air.
Actually, let's go right from there. Let's go right from there.
It was really quite neat because the dino was surprisingly light on his feet to a country beat. I don't like that very much. But he asked for one more time with a
Charleston.
what?
Charleston?
A what is it?
Charleston.
Oh, a Charleston. A Charleston for Maestro, please. Ceterosaurus.
The welders.
Mommy, leaving?
Yeah.